Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. The Wings of Fire series has genuinely the coolest book covers I've ever seen. The artist, 𝙈𝙤𝙬𝙁, poured so much talent and thought into bringing these scenes and characters to life. So much comes from these covers, and they're truly one of the most awesome ways new readers spot these books on the shelves. They definitely caught my eye, and they're just incredibly gorgeous to have in your hands and admire. So today I decided to do a pretty fun video where I highlight all the details you might have missed on the Wings of Fire covers. Whether it be things you overlooked, errors, or information you might not know about their creation, here's a lot you should know about the fronts and backs of the WOF books. But before we begin, a huge shout out to my patrons: Dargonet 3 Moon, Slightest Wild, Fizz, and Thistle. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Links to their social medias are in the description down below. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. Dragonet Prophecy's cover features a beautiful image of clay soaring across water in the Sky Kingdom. We can see a ton of fish leaping up and some gorgeous mountain areas behind him. One thing you may not know about this cover is that the pre-final version shows that Scarlet's arena was originally going to be featured. However, this ended up being removed from the final product for unknown reasons. The Lost Heirs cover showcases some stunning art of the Kingdom of Sea. We can see Tsunami exploring the vast blue ocean, surrounded by all that fills it. Something many Wings of Fire fans don't know is that on the pre-final cover, we can see that this book's title was originally going to be called The Last Heir. So, it went through 2 title changes before The Lost Heir was ultimately chosen: The Princess Murders, The Last Heir, and then The Lost Heir. I actually had no idea about last originally replacing lost until I was doing a bit of research for this video. While it is technically inaccurate, I actually think it sounds a lot cooler, something I didn't know could be possible for this book. I do think that title would have made the story seem a bit more dire, as we could have thought by the end there might only be one final heir to the seeming throne. But while the Dragonet Prophecy was free of errors, there are some small mistakes on the Lost Heirs cover. We can spot that Tsunami's eyes appear blue, despite the fact that they were described as being green throughout the books. Also, she's missing the royal swing pattern on her wings. This error will also return later for our other princess. Well, there isn't a lot to note about the cover for the Hidden Kingdom, besides its mesmerizing colors and depictions of the tribe and rainforest. I think it's really neat how we got to get a look at the area described in the books. We can see the treetop homes of the Rainwings, and even some sitting in hammocks, which is so cute. The Dark Secrets cover brings us a wonderful scene shot of Starflight on the volcano. Tons of other night dragons fly through the sky or remain perched on the molten rock. This pretty cover does have a lot of small mistakes, though. First, we can see Starflight's tongue being depicted as red. However, Nightwings have been described as all having black tongues. Starflight is also missing the small silver scale neck plates that all Nightwings are supposed to have. But to be fair, we don't ever really see any of them have this, even though it's listed as part of their appearance in the opening tribe guide. We can also see that Starflight's eyes are shown as brown, even though they're supposed to be a very dark green. The art for the brightest night gives us a fantastic and gorgeous look at the Kingdom of Sand, and at night too. When it comes to mistakes, we can notice that Sunny's tongue is pink and it isn't forked. Both Sandwings and Nightwings do not have pink or non-forked tongues. This isn't just a trait from one of the tribes she's a hybrid of. This isn't ever mentioned in the book as a difference between how she's supposed to look, so I'm chalking it up as a simple drawing mistake for the cover. Moon Rising's cover is genuinely one of my favorites in the series. It combines so many beautiful colors and unique shapes. It's just a spectacular aesthetic, and I could stare at it for hours. A cute little detail is that we can see some crabs and even a small few trees down in the cave. In the error department, the inside of Turtle's ears are shown to be green, when in reality they should be pink, which is correctly pictured on his cover. The Winter Turning cover is such a great sight to behold. It displays the many mesmerizing colors of the Ice Kingdom, and even gives us a really cool look at its palace. We can see narwhals, seals, and polar bears living in this icy tundra. Something interesting to note is that on the pre-final cover, no shades of purple were even intended to be there at all. It did leave the art looking a little bland for such a cinematic scene, so I'm glad many shades of prettiness were added in. When it comes to tiny mistakes, if you look closely you can notice that the insides of Winter's ears are pink. However, Icewing blood is blue or purplish. The coloration of this in animals is due to the blood vessels that lie close to the surface of the skin inside the ear. The Escaping Peril cover is my absolute favorite in the series. The art of the two Skywings and the beautifully ominous background is perfect. We got a totally new look at the Sky Kingdom, and it's very fitting for the themes and characters of the book. While this cover is free of error, there are some pretty cool details to admire and discover. For one, Queen Scarlet is only seen chasing after Peril in the hardcover version of the book. If you have a paperback copy, she's actually missing entirely, which is a bummer. Something that's also interesting is how on the pre-final version of the cover, Peril's eyes are white. However, on the final edition, they're accurately depicted as blue. While Talons of Power is one of the coolest in the series, it does have a ton of easy-to-miss mistakes and interesting details you might not have paid attention to. We're giving an amazing look at the turtle versus anemone fight on the beach. Turtle rises up out of the dolphin-filled waters, and anemone snarls. It's literally such an awesome piece of art, and the water is so detailed and pretty. I really like how Turtle and Anemone were depicted here, both in emotion and design. However, on the former, we can see that his bioluminescent scales give off a blue glow, when in the books it was described as green. Just like with the Lost Heirs cover, we can see here that the seeming princess Anemone is missing the royal pattern on her wings. This is a physical trait of all female seeming royalty. Also, I'm sorry, but the free final version has a pretty terrifying turtle on it. His eyes make him look dead, and I cannot unsee this now. Darkness of Dragon's cover is truly beautiful and cinematic. It provides us a super good look at the ruins of the lost city of Night, perfectly setting up the ominous appearance of this place now. This cover is genuinely so underrated, and I could even picture the location or a moment like this better in my mind. It definitely does the palace justice, and sets the vibe for the book. There is one mistake present, and it is something a multitude of fans have noticed, myself included. Keebly is missing his iconic snout scar. Being honest here, the Lost Continent cover is my least favorite. It's also littered with errors, some of which are pretty big when you take notice of them. But this art features Blue soaring up high near the hives, taking a look at the sunset. It does provide a really fascinating look at the design of the hives. But when I say important mistakes, I mean it. We can see trees pictured here, even though the whole point of this book is that the trees were all wiped out of the savannah after the war with the Leafwings. There's supposed to be no flora in sight. Instead, we even see some scattered trees next to the art of the savannah animals. We can also see here that Blue's snout is green when Cricket described it as being purple throughout the book. Also, one of the biggest details that'll make you go, oh, if you never realized, is that we see Blue with his wings here. He never got his wings in this book, as his metamorphosis occurred way later. While could be argued that these were chosen to be added for beauty reasons only, I'm still not much of a fan. I think seeing a wingless Silkwing would have been pretty unique and added some variety to the typical covers. And considering he never gets them in the book, it's just not even canon to that part of the story yet. A Barnes & Noble special edition of the cover was also made available temporarily upon release, and on that poster we can spot Cricket. While the art of her is magnificent, I'm glad it was excluded from the full cover. It just makes everything look too crowded, and her colors especially don't clash well with the background. We can note that her glasses have no earpiece here, even though in the book we can see a description of her fiddling with the eyepiece of her glasses. The Hive Queen's cover is genuinely so underrated and gorgeous. I absolutely love admiring all the small details. A fun fact about how the background came to be is that all Tui did was tell Joy-Ang the structure of the hives, and that Cricket would be in the center. Everything else Joy-Ang created herself. The shops are all of her own making and creativity. We can spot stalls for jewelry, honey, rugs, food, and more. Some of the shops are tents, whereas others are built into the honeycomb structures themselves. There's absolutely no doubt that the Poison Jungle has a beautifully stunning cover. The art here just captures the vibes of the book so well, and it's our best look at the Leaf Kingdom and Sundew. On it we can see a grand view of the Poison Jungle's flora and fauna, as well as many other leafwings within it. When it comes to overlooked details, I seriously never noticed this until deeply analyzing the covers, but there's a leafwing trapped in a Venus dragon trap plant. Their friend is shouting in scare, trying to get them out. It's honestly kind of funny, but it does show us the danger of the jungle firsthand. That and the many Dragonite vipers lurking around. It's also incredibly fun to see how many leafwings you can spot. as many are hidden in the foliage, as their camouflage colors would suggest. I spotted 13. With these additional dragons, however, comes a couple of mistakes. All the leaf wings here except Sundew lack the leaf-shaped tail tip they're meant to have. And speaking of our mean and green protagonist, Sundew doesn't have the golden spots on her wingtips that she was described as sporting. The Nature's Gifts cover artwork is absolutely mind-blowing. The beautiful sunrise, the stunning ice palace, our shiny ice wings, and even the caribou in the snow all make this breathtaking. It's genuinely my second favorite color in the series, I think. There are a few interesting and easy to miss errors, though. For one, the Get division appears as being pure blue, when in reality it has a milky, pink gold, white green opal in the center. Another that I definitely didn't notice at first has to do with the Talon dragons flying towards the Ice Kingdom. They all have bat-shaped wings like the Pierian dragons, but in reality their wing structure is much different. Remember, silkwings have 4 rounded butterfly-shaped wings. Hive wings also have 4, and theirs are like that of beetles. Leaf wings have rounded, leaf-shaped wings. They wouldn't appear like the Pierian dragons at all, even from afar. That aspect of them is different entirely. The Flames of Hope's cover is honestly such a cool one. Not only does it feature Luna in the Abyss, but it also sports Sky and Ren on the back. There are even bats and vipers down here. The only mistake I managed to find is that, besides his not book-accurate coloring, Sky's eyes are amber on the cover. However, they've always been described and drawn as being light blue. One cool fact about this cover is that buying the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition upon its release gave you a free poster of Luna and Swordtail flying through a pretty pink sky. I actually have this poster hanging on my wall, and it is beautiful to look at each day. And now, let's take a look at the Legends books cover, shall we? Darkstalker Legends has a pretty simple cover, though I do appreciate the grand look we get at the hybrid Animus himself. Speaking of his status as a hybrid, I don't really hear people talk about this, but Darkstalker is missing the line of white on his scales. Though we only got a half body, with it we still should be able to see the thin line of white where his wings meet his body. Another mistake I again don't see people mention a lot is that Darkstalker's horns were always described as twisted, yet they appear straight here. He's given the same treatment in the graphic novels, which is disappointing. I've always thought his twisted horns were super cool. While Dragon Slayer's cover seems pretty simplistic, I do love the look at General Sandstorm that we got. This scene is just so epic and tense, and I wish we actually got something like it in the book. With Sandstorm are some easy to miss errors that are hiding, though. For one, his tongue is shown to be pink, when in reality, all sandwings have black forked tongues. His eyes also appear to be gray, but one key physical feature of this desert tribe is that they all have entirely black eyes. I think this was done just to give his eyes some depth and character, because all black ones would be creepy and just not work. But that's all the details I've caught for the Wings of Fire book covers. Which mistakes did you learn about for the first time, and which cool new fact caught your attention? Let me know down below. Joy Ang truly brought this series to life with her fantastic art, and I'll always be grateful for every bit of it that we get. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!